Now that you've made it inside Crota's fortress, the real fight starts. You'll have to fight through waves of Hive just to even get a glimpse at Crota himself. Crota's got a big old sword that he wants to put in places that you would prefer to remain sword free. So let's see how to take this beast down. The first part of the fortress involves a gauntlet event where Hive enemies will spawn endlessly until you reach the end. There will be 2 Hive Shriekers that you must kill along the way. These are the ones that pulsate for void damage and then explode upon death. It will then send out little homing bolts that deal massive damage to targets hit. You could alternatively use a Titan's Ward of Dawn to avoid the damage. Make your way through the 2 Shriekers and then jump down into the hole at the end of the gauntlet to start the next part. You must kill the Shriekers because they will disable barriers that block your path. Note that there is an opportunity here to get a hidden raid chest. Please check out my chest video linked here to see how to get it. You must now reach the summoning crystal and kill Ur-Yut. Ur-Yut will start her song as soon as the event starts. From this point you have 2 minutes and 30 seconds to kill Ur-Yut before her song is complete. If the song completes, your group dies instantly. In the immediate area are tons and tons of acolytes and knights, both ranged and melee, with a lot of them being major yellow health bar enemies. At the time of this video, we are all level 30 and 31, meaning disposing of a lot of these enemies is much more difficult than intended, resulting in the following strategy. If the strategy changes significantly upon having a full group being level 32, I will update this guide. This fight is a blitz to the finish. It is highly suggested that you bring out your strongest weapons and heavy weapons for this fight, rocket launchers being the ideal. The strategy my group uses involves a 3-3 split, 3 players to the left and 3 players to the right. One person from each side should be designated to aggro their wizards by walking inside of the building near the room with the summoning crystal. Once the wizard is aggroed, simply run outside. The other 2 members of both teams should run up to these window balconies and should be killing anything else in the area while waiting for their wizard. When the wizard is in line of sight, kill it. You'll now have to deal with a Shrieker inside of the building, so all 3 members should move up and take it out quickly. Once both Shriekers are dead, continue to kill enemies until the final 30 seconds of the fight. We found that the left side usually has fewer enemies than the right, but you should move to whatever side has the fewest enemies to kill. When Ur-Yut begins the 30-second countdown to death, this is the time your group should rush in with as much damage as humanly possible to burst her down. She will not move while completing her song, which makes it a lot easier to hit her, especially with all the extra enemies wandering around. You'll be doing a lot of jumping. Once she is dead, your group should recover and start to kill the remaining enemies in the area. They will not despawn should you decide to start the final encounter. Once the enemies in the area are dead, you'll be given a new mission: destroy Crota. Crota only has one phase, but with many things going on at once. First, the mere presence of Crota cancels health regeneration. The area where you entered will be crawling with Thrall nearly the entire time. We call this the Pit. In the window balconies will spawn knights, both ranged and melee, which we call boomers, named after the weapon that they frequently use. The pit holds the Chalice of Light, which spawns at the very start of the fight and should be retrieved as soon as possible. When held, the Chalice enables you to regenerate your health and can be traded freely among players at any time. There are also other things that regenerate health, like the Titan's Transfusion melee attack and the Ward of Dawn, and weapons like Suros Regime, although it wouldn't surprise me if weapons like Suros had their healing abilities disabled in the future. Finally, in the pit spawns a Sword Bearer, which spawns every so often depending on the situation. The Sword Bearer drops a sword when killed, so if you wanted to take a guess about how you're going to kill Crota, only the sword can damage Crota. However, to make it safe for the sword holder to attack Crota, the rest of the group needs to burn Crota's shield down very quickly and consistently. If Crota ever goes around 3/4 of a second without taking damage, his shield will instantly regenerate. If his shield is brought down completely, he will kneel down, being vulnerable to attack from the sword, although for a very short time. Finally, if anyone dies during the fight, Crota will summon an Oversoul, which is a huge green blob that spawns behind Crota's starting position and needs to be targeted by all players and destroyed. If not destroyed, it will explode, killing everyone. This mechanic can be completely avoided by having no one die during the fight. Killing the Oversoul is not usually a problem. However, the fact that you can't focus your damage on higher priority targets like boomers, ogres, the sword bearer, or even Crota is the main reason why Oversoul is such a problem. The fight begins in the Summoning Crystal Chamber. To start, all players must move very close to the crystal. Acolytes and 2 knights will spawn on both the left and right side, with the barrier that previously blocked you out of the chamber now active again. The barrier will break and you should now kill all of the enemies in the area. The strategy used here is the strategy my group used to get the world 3rd kill, where we only had one level 31 player and the rest level 30. You may have heard of the middle strategy where you stay down low for the entire fight. This strategy will not be covered in this video. Should the strategy change significantly when using a full group of level 32 players, I will update this guide. Before you begin, you should designate a few roles. First will be one of the most important roles, the sword holder. This player will be grabbing the sword every time a sword bearer is killed to damage Crota. The sword holder should be the highest level player in your group if you do not have a full group of level 31s or 32s, as they will deal the most damage to Crota. Ideal sword holders are Titans and Blade Dancer Hunters for reasons we'll cover shortly. Next, you need a shot caller, the player who will be monitoring Crota's shield to tell the sword user when to attack. Next, you'll need a boomer watcher. This player will be prioritizing killing the knights that spawn in the window balconies and any melee knights that may jump onto the bridge. Next, you should have a flex player who will help with killing boomers with the boomer watcher, but otherwise should be doing damage to whatever the highest priority target is. Finally, the rest of the group, the pit group, should be dealing damage in the pit, killing Thrall and the sword bearer as needed, but should still help on boomers when available. This group will also be dealing damage to Crota's shield. The shot caller is part of the pit group. When the fight starts, Crota will spawn outside opposite of the crystal. He has 3 different positions he can be in, left, middle, and right. Crota will stay in one of those 3 places at all times. The only thing Crota will do is shoot orbs at you called Fist of Darkness. They are very similar to a Hive Wizard's attack. Crota will melee targets that get too close to him, killing them instantly, but the only person who should ever be near Crota is the person with the sword. Once all of the enemies are dead near the summoning crystal, all players should go to the left stairs and kill boomers immediately. One player should go retrieve the Chalice of Light from the center of the pit. While the pit seems very scary, as long as you keep jumping and moving, you should not be hit by anything. This knowledge is very useful when you have to go get ammo. The rest of the group should exit and immediately kill the boomers together before moving to work on the sword bearer. The sword bearer will be up immediately, so damage should start as soon as possible and as strong as possible after the boomers are dead. The reason it should be so strong on the sword bearer is because you want the sword sooner rather than later, because around 1 minute and 30 seconds after the fight starts, Crota will go to the right side, and trying to bring down Crota while he is on the move is very difficult. Crota will move much faster than you may anticipate, so it's best to start damage as soon and as hard as possible. The Boomer Watcher should bring the knights on the opposite side down to 1 shot. Killing them just makes them respawn, and you'll want to bring them down quickly when the sword holder is attacking Crota so that the sword holder doesn't die. Icebreaker is the ideal weapon for boomer killers, since ammo may be scarce and you need to always be ready for the rapidly respawning enemies. The boomer killer should not be greedy and try and help elsewhere, as calling out when boomers spawn is a very important job. Boomers are very lethal. The sword holders should be sure to grab the chalice when they go to grab the sword so that they can regenerate health. They will need it the most, although it is not 100% necessary. Once the sword bearer dies, all available players need to switch to Crota to bring down his shield while the sword holder gets into position. However, if the sword is far away from the player, wait for the player to get a little bit closer to the sword before damage starts to ensure the sword holder can get into position. My group valued consistent damage on Crota's shield over burst damage to make callouts easier. Let's talk about the sword holder now. As I mentioned earlier, the sword holder should ideally be a Titan or a Blade Dancer Hunter. The Titan works great because their vertical movement skill can send them very high into the air, making getting into position much simpler, especially when jumping from the middle platform, the close left, and the close right positions. The Blade Dancer Hunter also works great because of stealth. The Blade Dancer should be using Shadowjack and Stalker to let them go stealth on at least one of the takedowns. Crota will see the stealthed Hunter, but will be unable to attack them, allowing them to get perfectly into position as long as they are in stealth. Note that there is a cooldown on the stealth effect, so this will likely only work once per sword usage. The shot caller and the sword holder need to have clear communication, and Crota's shield health should be called out frequently. You're going to want consistent damage over burst damage, as burst damage may throw off the sword holder's timing in getting into position. Ideally, the sword holder should be jumping up to Crota when Crota's shield is around 25%, because by the time he would be going down, the sword holder will be perfectly in position. Too early and the sword holder is killed. Too late and you don't get any damage on the boss. It is a very small window of opportunity. It is also the reason we enjoy using the far left and far side rocks. It allows the sword holder to get onto the platform Crota is on without having Crota melee attack them, letting the sword holder get into position much easier. The sword holder should ideally be using the //slam combo like we used when we crossed the bridge. At level 31, getting off 2 of these combos will result in just over 50,000 damage, compared to 3 slam attacks only resulting in 43,000 damage. Getting off 2 combos is difficult though if you are not exactly in position as Crota comes down, so use your best judgment when attacking. 1 slam is more damage than 2 slashes, so you may want to opt for a slash combo, followed by a slam if you're short on time. Having your super is nice, but not necessary because of lengthy animation times. By using your super after a big combo, you can interrupt the finishing animation and go straight into your super, but this is just a bonus and is not needed to beat the encounter. It's also important to know that if someone dies as you bring down Crota, the Oversoul will still spawn, but Crota will still be vulnerable to attack for his normal duration. He won't kneel down until his Oversoul animation is finished, but you can still attack him, provided that his shield has gone completely down. It is possible and highly encouraged to bring down Crota twice within one sword phase, and is almost a requirement at lower levels. He will go immune to all damage after 4 seconds of him kneeling, and this immune period lasts about 3 to 5 seconds, indicated by a red flame-like shield around his entire body. Once this goes away, you can bring him down once again, but this needs to happen very quickly because the sword only lasts for 30 seconds, indicated by the music playing in the background. The sword holder can retreat either back down the way they came up or onto the bridge. The sword holder should retreat using their dash attack to ensure safety. If you plan on staying on the bridge, you'll need to avoid boomers on whatever side you're on, plus Crota's Fist of Darkness, so jumping is encouraged. After this first sword, the boss will rotate to the right, but you should continue to stay on the left side. Continue the fight normally, killing boomers and Thrall. When the sword bearer comes out, you can do one of 2 things. You can wait for Crota to go back to the middle, or you can try and attack him on the right. My group likes to wait for Crota to go back to the middle, so we do light damage on the sword bearer until he goes back into the middle, then bring the sword bearer down and repeat the damage process. Once Crota is brought down twice again, the entire group should rotate to the right side as Crota will now be moving to the left. We are now in the Ogre phase of the fight. After every 2 sword bearers, things get a little more crazy. Boomers will no longer spawn during this phase, but now in their place are Melee Knights, Thrall, and Cursed Thrall. Thrall from the pit will now run up the stairs and attack you, and you will also have Thrall spawning behind you from the Summoning Crystal area. The Boomer Killer should now be watching the bridge instead of the balcony, killing anything that gets close. After a short time, Ogres will spawn, 1 from each side. These Ogres are very deadly with their eye beam. Bunching up on the stairs should be done with caution as to not block anyone's path of retreat. Attacking from multiple angles is ideal. The Titan's flashbang grenade here works wonders to interrupt the eye beam. You should try and stagger the Ogre as much as possible by putting a lot of damage into its crit spot to prevent the beam from happening. The Ogre should be killed immediately and preferably before rotating back to the left side unless absolutely necessary, as Crota will be moving back to the middle during this phase. There is a variant of this strategy called the middle strategy, where everyone hops down and goes to the back of the room where you first drop down. This gets the Ogres into a better line of sight so you can burst them. In this clip, all of the players are using Icebreaker and other snipers to rapidly stagger and stun the Ogres. However, you should know that this also funnels all of you into one area, meaning if a beam starts to go uninterrupted, you may have some deaths. After Crota moves back to the middle, this entire process repeats itself until Crota dies, although depending on how quickly you kill the Ogres, the timers for Crota's movement and the sword bearer spawns may be slightly altered. Your group needs to make their own judgment calls in regards to how quickly you kill the sword bearer and bring down Crota. You want to avoid a situation where Crota is running to his next position while you're bringing down his shield. What my group usually does is wait for Crota to rotate to the right for our third sword bearer, and then for the fourth sword bearer, we wait for Crota to rotate to the left. The fourth sword is when we usually kill him. The ideal situation is to bring down Crota before you get another set of ogres, so on the fourth sword. While it's entirely possible to still kill Crota after getting a second set of ogres, it's not the ideal, especially considering his enrage will be near around the time you kill the second set of ogres. This fight requires insanely good communication among all of your teammates. Calling out shields and boomers is vital for success. However, with some slash and dash combos, teamwork, and a little bit of practice, you'll bring an end to Crota in no time. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you at hard mode.